Good evening, viewers. My name is Kuzafi Mchenjkon. Welcome to your world, a show that looks at all things money markets and investments. And today we are shedding more light on critical issues pertaining to informal traders, or what we call the small and medium enterprises. And we're just going to be looking at, the environment in which they are operating on, and focusing on the issue to do with critical issue like as risk management. So this is what we're going to be talking about. And in the studio, I'm joined by Stanley Namo, who is a financial risk expert and a consultant with experience advising SMEs across the country. Good evening, Stanley.
Good evening, Kudzi. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Let me get straight into my first question. I think we can start with the basics. What kinds of risk do SMEs and informal traders in Zimbabwe typically face?
You'll find that SMEs, just like any other businesses, they are faced with a lot of risky. Their risk exposure varies depending on the size of their businesses. But primarily, there are two broad categories of risky. There is what we call business risky, which may emanate from the decisions that can be taken by a business with an attempt or an intention to have a competitive edge over its other competitors. For example, a business may engage in robust marketing strategies such as discounts, excessive marketing, or sales promotion. So this can actually come up with some of risky that the business can end up maybe making some losses. Mm-hmm. And also they are financial risky. The financial risky, mainly they are attributed to the adverse movements in the financial or market factors, such as exchange rates, interest rates, amongst other things.
Mm-hmm. All right. Interesting. Now, that's quite a range. Would you say any of those is dominant?
Yeah, sure. You find that the SMEs and the informal traders in Zimbabwe, they cannot be able to escape financial risky. For instance, we have currency risky or exchange rate risky, which is basically the loss that may emanate from the adverse movements in the exchange rates, either through depreciation of the currency or maybe deliberate devaluation of the currency by the central bank. So at the end of the day, this will have a far-reaching effects to the income or the revenue of the SMEs. You take into consideration SMEs that are importing goods, for example, from other countries, and they want to sell. Maybe they are compelled by the law to also sell in the local currency. Now, the process of them changing the local currency to the foreign currency, it incurs some level of losses, which in turn may be translated as exchange rate risky. So you find that the SMEs in the informal sector, they are mainly susceptible to financial risky.
All right. Well, I also understand that there is issues to do with financial and regulatory risk. I think, can you shed more light on that?
So basically, financial risky, this is the risky that emanates from the adverse movements in market factors, like what we said. We gave example of exchange rates, and there's also another example of interest rates. When the interest rates, there is an adverse movement in the interest rates. Maybe the interest rates have been raised. So you find that now, if the SME or the informal trader had borrowed some capital or some working capital from a bank or from a microfinance or maybe from an informal lender, then they will be forced now to pay more than they would have paid if the interest rates were not reviewed upwards. Okay. So then they will be incurring interest rate risk. There is also issues to do with liquidity risky. Mm-hmm. By liquidity risky, we are looking at the inability of the SME or the informal sector to meet its short-term obligations should they fall due. Let's say, for example, they borrow for working capital requirements. They just want to pay rentals in the CBD, or maybe they want to pay their workers. So the process of them failing now to convert the assets that they have, the goods they have, into cash or easily convertible into cash assets, it makes them susceptible or maybe exposed to liquidity risky.
All right. Since we're talking about risk, Stanley, I just want you to, talk more about the issue with policy changes. we've got things like statutory instruments which are randomly introduced by the government, and this actually makes the economy not a friendly environment, especially for SMEs and the informal traders. Now, can you shed more light on that one when it comes to focusing on it as a risk?
Yes, of course, there is regulatory or compliance risky. Every business is guided or governed by specific laws that are peculiar to that specific industry. Let's take, for example, maybe an SME is trading in the liquor sector. There are regulations that guide or govern the selling of liquor. Maybe an SME is into agriculture. There are regulations also that govern that specific industry. So the failure by the SME to abide by the laws or the regulations of that specific sector, it can result in the SME losing either the business completely or the goods can be seized by the authorities. So then this can amount to significant losses, which may lead to closure of the business. So regulatory risk is also another risk that is inevitable for any business of any magnitude or any type. So you find that SMEs and the informal traders, sometimes there is also this cat and mouse chases in the CBD between the police and the vendors. That is a very pragmatic example of the regulatory risk that we are talking about. It is very legal for you to sell your goods, but you need to sell at a designated area or at a designated place. So for your failure to abide by that specific law, you are forced time and again to be facing these battles with the law enforcement agents, and also maybe in the long run, if you're a bigger business, you can find your assets being forfeited or being seized by the authorities.
Right. Well, interesting that you've mentioned all of these risks that people in business, particularly the SMEs and the informal traders, need to look out for. Now, I just want to make this real for our viewers, because I understand this show is a business show. We've got viewers who are now looking for information on how they can run their businesses. Can you share examples of how this risk can affect business on the ground?
Yes, you look at the example of those SMEs or informal traders who are domiciled in the second-hand industry, the Mabero, the Mpedzanamo. You look at it that at one point there was an SME who was left counting significant losses because maybe about 20 or so bales of second-hand clothes were seized by the tax collector. So you find that if you do not abide by the laws, if you are not abreast with the laws that govern your specific business, you are meant to be left counting significant losses, and you are made to make significant losses. So it is very important that SMEs, they do have first-hand appreciation of the risky that within their businesses or within their industry, and they also need to consult on how best they can manage or hedge this risk.
Thank you very much for making it clear on the issues to do with how they can be real on the ground. And I like the fact that you mentioned the issue to do with how business need to be well abreast with the laws of the country. Laws that are being introduced, they need to take note of those so that they can, align with those laws so that they do not face any problems in the future. So thank you very much for bringing that through. Well, viewers, that was it in our first segment. We are looking at the issue of risk management as it affects SMEs and also informal traders. We'll be back shortly with the second segment. Welcome back to the second segment of Your Wealth. Today we are looking on the issue to do with risk management, especially for SMEs and informal traders. And in the studio, I'm joined by Stanley Namo, who is an expert and also a consultant who has helped many SMEs on issues to do with risk. Now, I just want to find out from you, Stanley. I understand that you once worked as a tuck shop operator in Bari. Can you just shed more light on the issues to do with risk that you faced, so that at least we bring it closer to people when we are talking about risk management?
So you look at it in a more practical way. You have an SME who is operating a tuck shop, for example, in areas like Mbare or any other suburbs. When you are operating a tuck shop, you are exposed to mainly the foreign currency or exchange rate risk, because most of the goods that you are selling, they are not produced locally. You have to import these goods. So the importation bill is it is actually dominated in the foreign currency. So time and again, you can sell in your ZiG, you can sell in the local currency, but you are forced again to change this currency into a what? Into the foreign currency, be it the rands. Maybe you are importing from South Africa, or importing from Botswana, or maybe from Zambia. So you find the major risk that these tuck shop operators are facing will be that of foreign currency risk. Rarely do you find them being exposed to interest rate risk, because most of these informal traders, they are not formalized, they do not bank their monies or their revenue. At the same time, you'll find that very few of them can encounter liquidity risk. Although yes, it is something that cannot be avoided. Let's look at an example whereby somebody is operating a tuck shop and maybe you are getting the stock on credit. Now, when the creditors come and they do want their money and you do not have that money with you, it becomes now liquidity risky. So these are some of the risky that are inevitable when you are operating, for example, a tuck shop type of business.
All right, interesting. And now let's talk about informal cross-border traders. What sort of risk do they face?
Primarily, they're exposed to exchange rate risk. These people, they do need currency. They do need foreign currency. And you will find them that they are in competition of changing the local currency to the currency that they import their goods with. And now we also find that these cross-border traders, they are also susceptible to regulatory risk. Majority of them, they've been profiteering maybe from smuggled goods. You see, maybe they will try to avoid declaring duty or paying duty on their goods. So some of them, when the government now tightens, its operations on the borders and the airports, they start to cry foul now, because they are used maybe to making profits out of what? Out of tax evasion. So one of the major risks that these cross-border traders faced is that of regulatory risk. They want to circumvent the regulations. They want to avoid paying these duties. But at the end of the day, in the long run, it's not sustainable, because you can have all your proceeds seized by the tax collector. The law enforcement agents can descend on you and you end up counting significant losses.
All right. Well, so basically, in short, what you're trying to say, Stan, is that those who are engaging in informal cross-border trading, they should adhere to the regulations that are in place.
Yes, sure.
Because in the near future, some way, somehow, they're just going to be caught,
Yes.
and then it will be a loss for them.
Yes.
But now, I just want to bring it a bit closer home again, because we are talking about real issues here. When a client comes to you and then he tells you, I can't do this because for me it's a bit expensive, and it's rather better for me if I take the other route where I do not, adhere to the regulations. What do you tell them? Because for them, they're actually seeing a benefit, from not following the law. What do you tell them?
You see, there's a colloquial truism in the legal saying that ignorance of the law will never be a defense. One way or the other, the law is going to catch up with them. You'll find that now there's an SI that is declaring specific goods to, like, for example, if you are found with these goods that are in the hardware sector or maybe in the electricals, specifically they would want you to produce the declaration forms. They would want evidence that you paid duty. So think of it that maybe you can avoid the borders, you can avoid paying duty, but when you come back home, when the tax collectors or maybe the enforcement agents are deployed, they will come to you, they will visit your shop and they'll ask you for the evidence. And maybe you try to cook it up, but one or the other, they will catch it. Now, and it will be very expensive for you because now you'll be you'll be criminalized by the state. So it is better for you to be patient and make those small profits until you get to a point whereby even by abiding by the laws, you still make profits.
Well, interesting. I think that is a very crucial insight that you have brought to the viewers to say, you know what, rather you start small, enjoy those small profits, and then in the end you actually have a peace of mind as you're doing your business. Now, let's talk about solutions, Stanley. How can these entrepreneurs manage such risk?
Management of risk basically is dependent upon the type of risk. We look at the type of risk that you are exposed to. For example, when you look at the foreign exchange risk, when traders are exposed to this type of risk, they can hedge against this risk by engaging even in forward contracts, right? The forward contracts, basically, we are agreeing, the two of us, that we are going, maybe I am going to buy from you, but if I'm going to buy from you, the price at which I'm going to buy from you is determined today. And that price is dependent upon the value maybe of an underlying asset. And this value of underlying asset, it can be a reference asset, like for example, like gold. We can say the tonnage of wheat that I'm going to buy from you is going to be equivalent to the prevailing price of 1 ounce of gold. So you'll find that even if the exchange rate fluctuates to our disadvantage or maybe to our favor, one way or the other, they would have fixed the price of what? Of our transaction. So you can engage in forward contracts. You can also engage in currency swaps. You can swap currencies in the long run. So these are some of the ways of hedging against foreign currency risk. Then you also look at liquidity risk. When you are faced by challenges of meeting your obligations, you should not be somebody who always gives these silly excuses. When somebody you owe comes and he demands his money, you start to say, maybe my wife is pregnant. That cannot be an excuse because you knew that your wife is pregnant, but this person wants his money. So what are you going to do? You need to ensure that in your business, you always...
I'll have to cut you short there, Stanley. Then when we come back in the third segment, then we'll continue with your response. Thank you very much, viewers, for joining us for the second segment of Your Wealth. We'll be back with the third segment. Welcome back to the final segment of Your Wealth, and today we're talking about risk management as we zero in on SMEs and also informal traders, what they should know, what they should do so that they adhere to the regulations of the country. And I'm joined by Stanley, who is helping us to unpack some of these risks that they can look out for when they are doing their business. Now, understand we're talking about some of the solutions or strategies that SMEs, entrepreneurs can use in order for them to manage the risks. So I think you can continue with your points.
Yeah, sure. So now we're looking at the strategies of managing liquidity risk. We are saying it is very important, it is of paramount importance that the SMEs, they maintain assets that can easily be converted into cash. Assets that are liquid, assets that you can easily be able to sell. If you go to the marketplace right now on Facebook, you can easily be able to advertise, and by day end, you can get a buyer to your asset. For example, you want to preserve your revenue or you want to preserve your profits. You can buy a car, right? I'll just give you an example. The car is easily convertible into what? Into cash. If you compare selling a car and selling a house, these they do vary in terms of their liquidity. You take more days for you to dispose a property as compared to be disposing a car. So one of the easiest ways of managing liquidity risk for SMEs and informal traders, they need to ensure that they have assets that can easily be converted into cash, number one. Number two, they need to maintain sufficient cash reserves. They need to keep to maintain some savings from their profits daily, so that if the debtors come, the creditors come, maybe demanding their dues, they can easily be able to take from there and they pay.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Oh, interesting. Interesting. Now, let me ask you this. I think this is a very important question because some of the SMEs and the informal traders we have, they're still quite small. Are these affordable for your average informal traders, entrepreneurs, or SMEs, these solutions that you've given us?
Yes, these solutions, they are homemade, you see, because even if you are selling your tomatoes and you are generating a revenue or a profit of $10 a day, from that $10 you can decide to say, from this $10 I'm going to save $2 a day, so that if any of my my debtors, if any of my creditors approach me, I can be able to take from that reserve and I pay. And you also look at it from the angle that some of these solutions, they can be applicable to specific businesses. Okay. For those in the trading of goods imported from other countries, they need to approach, or maybe they need to stay abreast with the strategies of how they can hedge themselves against currency volatility. But then the same, it cannot be applicable maybe to somebody who is selling his tomatoes in the streets. Those people, they can be able to receive their revenues in local currency, and they can be able to approach the wholesale market and restock without any hassle. So some of these solutions, they're applicable to certain specific or certain type of businesses, and at the same time they are also not applicable to other businesses.
Okay. And now, what is the role of the government and financial institutions in all of this?
Basically, the government is there to provide a business-friendly climate. The government is there to provide policies that promote business. The government is advocating for entrepreneurship. The government is carrying out through the Ministry of SMEs. There are a lot of programs that have been rolled out to capacitate SMEs so that they can be able to understand the risky that they're exposed to, and they need to understand how they can manage to hedge themselves against those risky. And you also find that the financial institutions have a corporate social responsibility role to play in terms of capacitating also these SMEs. They need to be trained on financial literacy. They need to be trained on risk management. And some of these financial institutions, they've come up with products that are peculiar to the SMEs and the informal traders. For example, micro insurance for businesses. So they need also to train these SMEs on how best they can insure their businesses.
All right. Now, interesting. Now, is the current ecosystem supportive?
The current ecosystem is not that supportive to the SMEs, in the sense that the way that our policies were crafted, they were crafted looking at a formal economy. Mm-hmm. But now, if we want to go practical, you can see that our economy is largely informal. So we need to come up with policies that promote those informal traders so that they can formalize. Okay. Which bank is open to accommodate or maybe to tolerate these informal traders? Mm-hmm. You see, now you look at it from this angle that if all these informal traders, they can be able to be formalized, they can be able to be taxed within their means, then certainly they are going to be contributing significantly towards the GDP of the country. So the current ecosystem is not that friendly to SMEs. It is like being an informal trader is like, you have committed a very big crime. But that is not the issue, because if you want to borrow from other countries like the Asian tigers, Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, those countries, you find that their economies at one point, they were actually supported, or maybe they were developed to a large extent by these SMEs. So the government have a role to capacitate these SMEs and ensure that they are supported in whatever way that they can ensure, sustainability of their businesses and overall contribute to the GDP of the country.
Well, interesting. Thank you very much for packaging that response in that way. Now, as we wrap up, what are your final words to our viewers who, of course, entrepreneurs, SMEs, and informal traders? What would be your parting words?
My parting words are very simple. Risky is inevitable in every business. You cannot completely avoid it. So you need to find a way of understanding the risky that you are exposed to, either as an SME or as an informal trader. You should not take anything to chance. You need to understand the risk that you are exposed to, and you come up with strategies of either avoiding that specific risky if it is too large to expose yourself to that risky, find a way of transferring to a third party, or find a way of navigating or managing that specific risky. And overall, risky is not all that bad. We only need to find a way of managing the risky, and we make profit out of it.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Stanley, for that. Overall, risk is not that bad. We just have to find solutions in which we can manage it. So this is words that are coming from a seasoned person in the sector of risk management. And we hope that you have managed to gain a lot. Thank you very much, Stanley, for coming through. It's always a pleasure having you here.
The pleasure is mine.
Thank you very much, viewers, for joining us right here on Your Wealth. My name is Kuzafi Mchenjekwa. See you next time on Your Wealth. Good evening.